on that piece of steel with my little buddy Thumper here. You think you could hammer with Thumper? Yeah? You sure?
Well, it's pretty heavy.
Oh, that's okay. You might drop that on your toe. That wouldn't be a good thing, would it? I wouldn't even want to drop Thumper on my toe. I call him Thumper because Thumper thumps. How you doing? You ain't down here drinking my coffee, are you? Sure. I was going to say, you might want to be careful if you work, because that'll put hair on your chest. That don't look real good. Well, you know what? Since everything else is shut down and we all wound up here anyhow, I'm going to break the rules and go ahead and get started. I'll keep you folks waiting any longer. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the blacksmith shop. I'm Greg the blacksmith, and I'm going to tell you folks about blacksmithing back in the time of Pedro Menendez, the founder of our city of St. Augustine, 457 years ago. That's right. They came here this month, back in 1565. Now, let's start at the beginning. Why is a blacksmith a blacksmith? Do you know? Give you a clue. It has nothing to do with the soot that we get on us. That's what everybody thinks. What do you think?
Because blacksmiths work metal.
You're right. It's because of the metal. The metal that we work with is why we're blacksmiths. Blacksmiths are iron workers. We work with iron and steel. Back in the olden days, iron and steel were collectively known as the black metal because of the black oxidation that forms on them. So the black in blacksmith simply indicates the type of metal that we work with, no different than the gold and goldsmith or the silver and silversmith, except, yeah, those guys make more money, don't they? Now, the smith part comes from the old English word smite. To smite means to strike or hit, like so. Over the years, all that smiting gets turned into smithing to describe metal workers who hammer their raw material to make things. So smiths are all metal workers, and there were lots of them back in those days. There had to be. There was a huge demand for all kinds of metal goods to be made, and that stuff all had to be made by hand. There were so many metal workers that we wind up with all those smiths in our phone books nowadays. That's right. It's the most common last name in the English language, bar none. And all smith means is metal worker, someone who smites. Now, the blacksmith here in St. Augustine, we're not doing any of that Hollywood movie stuff. You'll never see a blacksmith in a Hollywood movie who isn't doing one of two things, making a sword or shoeing a horse. Think about it. You ever seen a blacksmith do anything else in a movie? There's only one that I can think of, and that would be the Gregory Peck version of Moby Dick, where the blacksmith on board the ship reforged the harpoons and lances. Remember that scene? Before y'all started. But the blacksmith here didn't need to make swords because they brought swords with them from Spain, along with all the other weapons that they needed. These were dangerous times. They wanted those soldiers fully armed and ready for battle just as soon as they got here. There was certainly no time to wait around after they got here to make weapons for their soldiers. That would have been dumb and risky, and they didn't do that. So they brought the swords. What they didn't bring were any horses. Horses didn't arrive here in St. Augustine until later on. So in the early days, the blacksmiths would have mostly been working on what folks needed as they went about the hard work of building this colony. Nowadays we have Home Depot. Back then they had the blacksmith shop. So blacksmiths would have spent a lot of time working on tools. You can't build a house with your bare hands. You need tools, and they did too. And blacksmiths spent a lot of time repairing damaged tools, sharpening tools that had gotten dull, and making new tools as necessary to make sure folks had tools to work with. When you go to build a house, are you going to need nails? Of course you are. If you want to put a door in that house, you need a set of door hinges. Like I said, well, they didn't have no Home Depot back then, so blacksmiths had to make chains, hooks, hinges, latches, nails, all the metal hardware and fasteners that we take for granted nowadays. And last but not least, cooking utensils. That's right, everybody had to eat. That means somebody had to cook, and the only way they had to cook was over fire. But thanks to us blacksmiths, 457 years ago, they actually had low, medium, and high on their stoves. This little gadget right here in my hand is called a cooking trammel. Let me show you how it works. The trowel gives you a way to hang your pot up over your cooking fire. And right there at your fingertips, guys, you've got low heat, medium heat, and high heat. Bring it up to a boil. Once it starts boiling, reduce my heat to a simmer. Let it finish cooking, and when it's done, keep it on low to keep it warm when everybody gets home for dinner. All the comforts of home. Now, to make all this stuff, they needed raw material, iron and steel. There's none of that here in Florida. They had to bring it all with them, and they did. On the very first voyage, they brought 6 tons of iron and steel for the blacksmiths. How do we know that? Well, it's recorded right in the cargo manifest of the San Pelayo, which was Pedro Menendez's flagship, the largest vessel in his expedition. That 12,000 pounds of metal arrived here, already rolled out into rods, bars, straps, even sheets, rolled out at mills back in Spain that were powered by water wheels. That's right, they didn't have steam power back then, so they would build the mills beside a river, use water wheels to turn belts and pulleys to drive stone rollers that they could use to hot roll the metal out into the shapes they needed to make. They also brought all the tools and equipment. The most valuable piece of equipment in any blacksmith shop, the heart of the operation, is that hot fire called forge. What I'm burning in my forge is not coal. Just like there's no iron here, there's no coal in Florida, not a drop of it. Nope, so they had no coal to burn. And it would not have mattered if they did. In the 16th century, even back in Europe, folks had not switched over to burning coal just yet. They were still making and burning wood charcoal. Wood charcoal. In Spanish, charcoal is carbon. The men who made it were called carboneros, and that was their trade, their livelihood. They were professional charcoal makers, and we know that Menendez included them in his expedition. Now, in your barbecue grill, wood charcoal is going to burn hot enough to cook, but it tops out somewhere between 600 and 700 degrees. It can't burn any hotter because it's only burning the available oxygen in the air around it. That's not hot enough for metalworking, so guys, don't go home and try to make a sword in your barbecue grill. It won't work, I promise you. You need a way to get the fire hotter. That's why we had this big air pump back here called the bellows to blow air into that fire and feed it more oxygen. By doing that, I can run the temperature of my wood charcoal forge all the way up to 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. This thing will melt steel like a stick of butter. But I don't want to melt it. I just want to get it hot to make it soft so it's easy for me to shape into whatever I need to make. Right now, it's soft enough I can wave at you guys. Hi guys, how you doing? It's not going to break because that metal is malleable at this point. I can stretch it, twist it, cut it, punch holes in it, do anything I need to do to make whatever it is I'm making. And that's why that fire is so important. Without it, none of these other tools are of any use. We have to have that hot fire to make the metal soft so that we can shape it. So let's get the kinks out of this old boy real quick. And we'll make something. Now guys, in a 10-minute demo, I don't have time to make a candelabra. So I have to keep it necessarily small and simple, but still historically relevant. I am going to make a nail, but not just any old nail. I'm going to make a nail like the ones they used to build St Augudtine with 457 years ago. Now, how do we know what their nails look like? Well, the archaeologists here in town, at almost every excavation site they go out on, they recover quantities of these iron nails. So we know they were commonly used, very important to the Spanish settlers. But their nails back then looked different than our nails do nowadays. Look at that, there it is. Uh-oh. I'm missing a nail. Oh, well, that's okay. It was the modern nail anyhow. Their nails were square. They weren't round and smooth like our modern day nails are. Modern nails were made by machines in factories. Their nails were square because they were hammered out by hand with hammers. Square just happens to be the fastest, easiest, most efficient way to taper a piece of metal to a sharp point with a hammer. Why? Because by keeping it square, I only have to strike that metal on two sides. The hammer flattens the top. The anvil flattens the bottom. Every time I strike, I'm flattening top and bottom. Two sides. Quarter of a turn, hit it again, watch 2 times 2. And how many sides is a square head? We just solved the mystery of why their nails were square. It's the most efficient way to make one of these with one of these right here, and that's why they did it that way. So to make that nail, our first step is, of course, get that metal hot. How do I know when it's hot enough? Well, that's easy, I just look at it. That's right. What temperature is that piece of steel right now? I don't know, and I don't care. We don't use thermometers, so why would we be talking about temperatures? We judge the heat in the metal by observing the color of the metal. The first color that it's going to turn is one you've heard all your lives, red hot. Everybody heard red hot, right? That's supposed to be so hot. Man, that's so hot, it's red hot. That's the first color. When it gets hotter than red, it turns orange. When it gets hotter than orange, it turns yellow. And then the hottest of all is white hot. We never bring it up to white hot. That's just going to melt the metal and ruin it. Why would we do that? To make a nail, red won't be hot enough. Yellow will be too hot. What color should we go with? Orange. That's our Goldilocks color because it's just right.
That's indicators of
Again, when I
orange.
start hammering, you might want to take just a couple of steps back. I don't like burning people. They smell funny. Well, that orange hot, we do know through the use of modern scientific instruments, orange hot in steel is between 1,600 and 1,800. So you get hit by 1,800 degree spark, you won't feel it. I guarantee you, you're going to feel it. All right. Let's get him up to a nice bright orange. You got a little pressure thing on, young man. I got to pay attention to this hot steel, or else I'm going to get burned. That's not happening today. So we'll start by flattening two sides. Just like so. Give that guy a quarter turn, flatten the other two sides to make it square. Now I'm going to tap and turn as I stretch the end of that nail out longer and thinner. All I have to do is angle the head of my hammer slightly to taper that down to a nice, square, sharp, tapered point. So we got a square, sharp, pointy nail, but it's too long to be a nail, isn't it, guys? We've got to trim that down to size. For that, I'll use this hot cutting tool right here called the Hardy. It's like an upside down chisel that goes right there, and using that, I'll just tap in 4 deep notches, being careful not to cut my nail all the way off, because while I was talking, it was cooling and beginning to reharden. Right now, I'm just polishing up my hammer marks to make it pretty for the girls in the gift shop. So there's our nail. He's ready to go, right? Head on a nail is very simple. In order to put a head on a nail, you hit the metal hot, and then you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly how it works. You need the metal to be hot enough to be malleable so you can squish it like Play-Doh, and then you need a tool or fixture to hold it so it can't move. So as you're striking, you're squishing that metal shorter. If that metal's got nowhere else to go, where's it going to go? It's going to spread out and form the head of the nail for you, just like that. Now, the most commonly used tool for this looks like this little guy right here. Quite literally called a nail header, a very ancient tool. The ancient Romans actually had these and used these. Yes, the Romans made nails. In fact, the Romans are the ones who invented the claw hammer, believe it or not. Yeah. But when I use that, it gets kind of hard when I have a big crowd for folks to see. So for everybody to have a better chance of seeing what's going on here, I like to use my post vise because it's up high where you guys can see. I can get back here behind it, and I shouldn't be blocking most of y'all's view. But let's have a little fun. Just a little fun here. Did they have these back then? No. Who says no? Who wants to bet me $5? Raise your hand if you've been a blacksmith for 23 years. Last 16 have all been devoted to historical colonial blacksmithing, and I've done tons and tons of research. Folks, where we're standing is a very, very important historical site as far as the colonial history of America goes. Far too important for us to be out here getting it wrong by misrepresenting history by using tools they didn't have. You don't have to take my word for it. Let me show you something interesting. When you're doing serious historical research, and I don't mean Googling Wikipedia, I mean the real stuff, never overlook contemporary artwork. art that was produced during the time that you're researching can give you valuable visual clues to aid your research. This is a copy of a woodcut from the 1500s that I obtained from a museum, and the first thing we encounter in this blacksmith shop is a perfectly drawn rendition of a tornillo de herrero. Yep. Which is blacksmith vice in Spanish. Now, did they have them back then?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, raise your hand if you bet me that $5. No, I didn't think so. Oh well. But now, seriously, guys, we try our best to get it right out here. That's why my bellows is custom hand built, replicating one that was found here in St Augudtine that was attributed to 16th century Spanish use. So yeah, we don't take any shortcuts. Let's get a head on that nail. What do you think? Can I do it? Oh yeah. It's not hard to do. Just got to get it back up to orange hot. This time I have to pay attention. It would be easy for that 2,500 degree forge to melt the point right off of my nail. That wouldn't be any good. Then I'd have to start over. But I think he's just about ready, and he is. Okay, so we'll just leave up just enough material here to form the head of our nail with. That's good right there. Break it off right where I notched it. Take my hammer and hit that nail on the hook. And now we got a hit on our nail. Yeah. Now, you got to do the trick. Let's see if anybody else is brave. I need a brave volunteer. You've already done it. There we go. Very carefully grab this 1,000-degree steel rod without getting burnt. Now, guys, y'all are all sitting there looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm not crazy, and neither am I. The reason that's not burning you and it's not burning me is because iron and steel are poor conductors. It is 1,000 degrees at the other end, but I wouldn't hand you the hot end. That'd be a mean thing to do. Heat is going to transfer slowly through a poor conductor like this. So it's going to take a while for the heat at that end to get to my hand at this end. That's why you were able to hold on to it. That's right. So, it's not magic. It's just blacksmithing. Grab the cold end, not the hot one. There you go. But it doesn't have to look hot to be hot. That nail does not look hot, but I am not going to grab it with my fingers. I'm not a rookie. That's why I made these tongs, to grab hot stuff. I like these tongs. They remind me of what nice guys those blacksmiths are. 457 years ago, there were no dentists yet. No dentist. You had to have a tooth extracted, you come see me. I'll take care of it. So here's the square nail we just made. Right there. Now, did it take 5 minutes to make one nail back then? No, guys, that's a demonstration. Intentionally slowed way down so I can explain what I'm doing. Had a buddy of mine snuck in here one day. Did you want to see the nail that I just made? Huh? Somebody in a bit of a mood? Yeah. Just made. Yeah. Had a buddy of mine snuck in here behind me one day, and he timed me. And when I got done, he said, "Man, you just made that nail in 14 seconds." I said, "Son, I'm not as young as I used to be." The point is, it doesn't take as long to make stuff as it does to demonstrate and explain how it gets made. Now, anybody have a question? Yes, sir?
The nails that they recovered over there after 450 years, why didn't they rust out?
That's a good question. Have you ever traveled in Europe?
Yes.
And seen those old iron gates and stuff like that from back in the 1400s and stuff? Why didn't they rust away? It's because they were using wrought iron. Wrought iron has a peculiar property. It will rust until the entire surface is covered with rust, and then it stops.
Is that why they call it
Doesn't
rot?
rust anymore.
What does the word rot mean?
Huh?
What does the word rot mean?
Rot?
Wrought iron is W-R-O-G-H.
It means worked.
Worked.
Worked. Rot means worked. Yeah. So basically, when you smelt the iron from the ore, you get iron ingots. Then it has to be wrought. It has to be worked to get iron bars and stuff like that. But we have an old ship's anchor leaning up against a tree over there that's made out of wrought iron. And if that were made out of modern steel, it would have rusted away a long time ago. So they were using primarily iron for most of the stuff that they made, reserving steel, and yes, they did have steel. They would reserve the steel because it was made in small quantities at higher expense. They would reserve that for things that needed to be heat treatable to make sharp points and cutting edges and things like that for tools and weapons and things. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, of course.
How many swords did they bring?
How many swords did they bring? Enough for all their soldiers. They even brought spares. Yes, they did.
What number?
Huh?
What number?
What number? Oh, probably about 1,100.
That's a big number.
Any other questions? Well, folks, thanks for stopping by today. I hope y'all have a great time here in our park now that it's full. Thank you very much. They might be able to fire that 3 o'clock cannon. So just keep your fingers crossed that it don't rain on us no more. We should be good.